Welcome to the Eschatology Podcast, brought to you by Resonix. Visit ResonixSoundSolutions.com for the best ways to free your car, motorcycle, house, or spaceship from resonance with Resonix. And many thanks to Resonix for making this podcast a reality.
It's like somebody who would star in like Little House on the Prairie.
Right? Actually, if you want, my middle name's Arturo, but in English it's Arthur. So Michael Arthur Rivers.
Michael Arthur Rivers. See, I could actually probably get by with saying that one.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure, but probably. Welcome to the Eschatology Podcast. I am here with
Miguel Rios.
There you go. Michael Rivers.
Or Michael Rivers, depending on which way you want to say it.
Not sure if that's like a porn name or...
I mean, I don't know. I don't think my wife will appreciate that one, but we'll see.
I mean, I said Little House on the Prairie earlier. Maybe we should stick with that one. That's a little... So we are here in person after spent, I guess, about 6 hours.
Yeah, about there. And then we got some lunch halfway in between it.
So 5 hours or so, 6 hours tuning in person.
Yep.
Here on my van. And, well, how was that experience for you?
It was good. Got the JLMax set up, did the typical RTA, phase alignment, impulse response, not in that order. And then hopped in it, made some changes by ear. I typically like to give my ears a break after 30 minutes or 45 minutes.
Right.
So then we went to go grab lunch and then hopped back in and verified that things were appropriate according to the goals that Clifton gave me. But like always, I always preach it. We have different ears. So then he sat back in and we made a couple more changes to really get dialed in for his personal needs. Not my taste and my wife's taste, but his taste.
And I will say the whole experience working with you, as far as that goes, was pleasurable. I mean, it was just having that interaction and having the listener involved in that process from before you even got here or started was an important one. It wasn't just, I'm the master and I'm going to do this thing and tell you exactly what to do, and you do it and then it's done. Like, I think there was a healthy level. I mean, I'm just commending you on that part. There was a healthy level of give and take on putting responsibility on the owner of the vehicle to have their input and share what their desires and needs are. And you, I mean, I told you probably maybe a little bit more inspecific than some would, but you followed my directions to the T. And then once that was done, I was like, well, maybe I gave a little bit too much direction there. Maybe let's pull that back a little bit. But the thing is that I think that showed that you were listening, you did that, and it was like, okay, here you go. Here's what you wanted. And then that was up to me to say, well,
Yeah, or nay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And I think that all of that was very good. I think it was the parts where the vehicle owner or whoever is having you do the tune, the parts that might be interesting to you, or the parts that might be interesting to you and I, but probably not interesting to the majority of people that are going to be a client in this kind of service. You left at a minimum. It was like you took the grunt work and you let that part be that part, but I don't feel like you gave me an experience different than others would have gotten, right? I mean, you just did your process.
Yep.
But I never felt like you were here trying to impress me, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, for sure. I will give every single one of my customers, clients, people who just ask for help, the same kind of help or experience that I would want in my own personal vehicle. So it will either be you, Clifton, or Evan that tuned yesterday, or whomever else. I just want to make sure that at the end of the day, you get to enjoy your vehicle in your system, because it is an investment. If we didn't enjoy this, then we would just keep the factory premium or stock system and just call it a day. But the people who want to actually enjoy it, there's a reason why, and they're looking for something. Sometimes it is harder for them to really put their thumb on it and be like, yeah, I mean, I want 8K. But sometimes they just be like, yeah, I want more impact. And that's kind of what you gave me a little bit. Like, I want impact. I'm like, okay, well, now it's up to me to figure out, what do you mean by more impact? Do you just mean more sub bass, more mid bass? Do you want a little boost at 250? or do you want to take it away at 80? Like, what are you looking for? So yesterday I asked you over the phone, I was like, hey, what kind of music do you listen to? And the answer I got was yes. I was like, cool. Funny enough, I actually get that answer a lot. So I asked you, like, okay, top 3 songs that you were planning to listen to. And you were like, G-Eazy, Put On. I was like, okay. So he wants very low visceral sub bass tracking. Okay, what else? And then you're like, dude, I want impact, but I don't want it overbearing. I was like, okay, let me go figure out what he means. Given that you only had a singular mid bass, I have to manipulate your big mid ranges to try to get that impact up on the hood the way most of us would want it. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, tactile feel, as you and I experienced, didn't help us there. But I think we achieved it to a point where it's still enjoyable on a daily basis, but it's still image as well.
Agreed. And that's one of the beauties or hindrances of this particular system, I think, is that it definitely throws some curveballs. But I think it also proves where sometimes having the technical expertise to be able to control, read what you're doing on the measurement tools and also input that to get the feedback you desire on the DSP side, and then also be able to use your ears in the vehicle directly if you're comparing a on-site tune versus a remote tune. I think especially in a system such as this, that's where that benefit comes, where even I may not be able to give you the feedback to be able to, it's just not coming together. Why is it not coming together?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's just not. And then it's like, well, I don't know, maybe 80, maybe 100. And it's like, man, it would just be so much easier if I was there in person. And, I'm blessed enough to have the opportunity where I am able to travel to people like here in Indiana and just sit with you and really get it dialed in for your taste, but with my ears being there so I can know what frequency to look for.
And I think even beyond that, the abstracts of the imaging side of things, and that, like, there are limitations of my system because of the way it's set up that some things it's just not going to do. And it's going to be one of those things where if you're just assuming from the other side that, well, these things all line up, it should just do this. And I'm going, well, it's not doing it. We could be here all day fighting that out.
Yeah, exactly.
You said a second ago that, you're blessed to be able to do this in person and be on the road and everything else. Let's back up a little bit to how we got here. I guess, what's your background professionally, and then also before or after that? I assume before that, even, like, how'd you get into car audio in the first place?
For sure. So let's start professionally. I'm an Intel analyst by trade. I'm prior Air Force veteran. I did that for about 8.5 years. Just got out last February. I got medically retired because I messed my back really bad during a deployment. And after 4 years of fighting with them, telling them, hey, I can barely walk a quarter mile, they finally released me. So kind of the same thing happened with my wife. So we're both 100% disabled by the VA. Once again, we're blessed. So even though we're dealing with pains and there are a lot of limitations that I can't do anymore, at least we have the monetary value there. So I can at least do other things to try to help other people out with the gifts that I've been bestowed by. So moving further back than, my business or my professional career, car audio. I've always been an audio fanatic, if you will. I remember when I was 3 living in Puerto Rico, I actually duct tape a boombox to my bicycle.
Nice.
So probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, but I did.
Details.
Yeah, right. And then when I was 14, actually, you know what? Let me back up a little bit. When I was 12, I remember the exact moment I kind of fell in love with car audio. I was in Florida during spring break. My parents were on vacation there, or I guess my family was. And full windows down, my dad played Kiss Kiss by Chris Brown at full volume. And I was so embarrassed, but man, that thing was like the coolest thing ever. There was like a little Buick Lucerne that my parents rented. I didn't think it even had the Bose system in it. I think it might have just been like the basic system, but like it just like intrigued me. I'm like, how is this doing this? Like there's bass, like this is so cool. And then when I was, I think 14 or 15, one of those two, the guy I was working for, he was teaching me how to like rebuild engines and properly paint and build transmissions and all this other fun stuff. His son was a software engineer. And for my birthday, he said, hey, I got you this Rockford Fosgate P1 a seal box, and an MTX amp, and these wires. If you can install it, I'll give it to you for free.
Wow.
And he said, you cannot use YouTube or any other help. Just figure it out. So it took me 2 full days to figure out how to plug in power, ground, and remote. But man, did I do it. And when I heard that 12-inch like come to life, I was like, man, I have to be the hardest hitting person in the world. Like this 12-inch is insane. You know, sometimes I wish I can go back in life and like experience that again.
Yep.
But
I think
now,
a lot of people do.
Yeah. Now, over here, you know, building cars and tuning cars of systems, I'm like, man, this is good, but it could always be better. And this dude has like $30,000 in it.
Right.
But beforehand, me like $100 subwoofer was all I needed, and I was happy.
Right.
So yeah, that's kind of how I got into the car audio.
So have you competed before? When did you get into that, or what got you from that into doing the crazy systems and then into tuning at a high level?
For sure. So as we all probably have started, back in the day, I thought loud and clear was sound quality. And then someone introduced me to sound quality, and his name was Joshua Howe in Louisiana. This was half a decade ago. And he was like, hey, this is a different world than just loud and clear, saying crossovers, setting gains appropriately, you know, and calling it a day. And I was like, wow, this is cool. I like this. And I was like, how do I do it? He's like, oh, you have to learn how to tune. And he also was trying to learn how to tune for car audio. He was a huge home theater guy. So he understood that portion. And at this point in time, I had my reference I do now at home, which is my JBL synthesis. So I knew what good sound was supposed to be. I just didn't know you can put that in a car. Mm-hmm. So I started with all Audio Frog GB everything. So GB10, GB25, GB60. This was in a black Mazda 6. And then 2 Audio Frog GB10s. We custom built enclosures, 0.7 of a cubic foot on each side at the very back of the car to kind of hide them. And then GB6 in the doors, 25 in the 10 stock locations. Started tuning pretty much every single day I would tune. And I had a Helix DSP. Every single day I would tune. And every single day it would sound like absolute dog crap. And I'm a person that likes to educate and just read and do until I figure it out. So I was reading Andy's tuning guide. That's where I started. And I had a U-Mic 1. And I would just, like I said, tune it every day. Every single day sounded bad. Until one day it started sounding good. Well, Lone Star, and then answering one question, have I competed before? Yes and no. So back in 2021 was my first event I ever went to, was Lone Star. Mm-hmm. And didn't know anything about competition. Josh was like, hey, there's this event down in Dallas. It's only a 3-hour drive. Not Dallas, excuse me. Where's that? College Station. That was where Lone Star was.
Lone Star was Dallas, yeah.
Oh, no, Dallas. Okay, it was Dallas. And he was like, do you want to go? I was like, sure. He was like, but you have to tune for competition. I didn't know what that meant. So what do? Go to Reddit. That's where everyone finds their information at. And what I see is tune it flat. So what I do, I literally tune it flat. And it sounded terrible. But I'm like, if this is what
this is it, huh? This is what they want.
I was like, if this is what they
I guess they're deaf, but okay.
Yeah, I was like, this doesn't sound good, but whatever. So I go there, and what happens?
You get smashed.
Yeah. Like the car sounds terrible. But I was able to experience other cars. Sure. Which opened my eyes. I'm like, wow, like other cars can be here. And this is where I met a lot of cool people. So I went back home and I was like, okay, Josh, I want to get my car to sound like these other cars. What do I do? He's like, we got to keep on learning how to tune. And I'm not lying when I said every single day, if not once or maybe twice, I would tune this car. And then I got a U-Mic X from Aaron. Aaron was selling it on Facebook. Mm-hmm. And I reached out to him. I was like, hey, I need it right now. I want a mic array. So I got a mic array and that helped me out. So kept tuning and got rid of the Audio Frogs. I noticed like they were hindering me. I personally felt like I was already reaching the level where I could out-tune what they were giving me. And just the timbre of the speakers wasn't what I was looking for. Mm-hmm. So I got the full Morel Lake Carbon Pro series, put that in my car. And then I was starting to really make something happen where it would image well, the tonality was there, the bass was there. Mm-hmm. But I always felt like my amp wasn't up to snuff. So someone was like, hey, have you ever heard of Arc Audio? I'm like, no, what's that? You know, now thinking about it, it's such a like naive thing to say. Like, what is that? Like, it's Arc. They've been around forever. But I got introduced to the Arc Audio Arc Series amp, and I put that in my car, and I just felt like the whole car just went up to the next level with that amp. The power was there, the detail was there, and just kept tuning it. And then I went to finals, and of course I didn't qualify for finals because I didn't really go to any real events. But I did I think it was a 3X event that they had there for the next year. And Scott Welch hopped in my car, and he said in it, he hopped out, and I will never forget this. He's just like, "Who tuned this?" It almost sounded like he was mad. I was like, "Oh man, I messed up again."
Right.
And I was like, "I did." He's like, "Man, this thing sounds really good." And it's like, it felt good because like,
sure,
it was just Josh and I day in and day out, just trying to learn. And having a judge that a lot of people said like, "Hey, that dude knows what he's doing and knows how to listen. Tell me like, hey, I'm on the right track."
Right.
Really solidified. I'm okay, maybe I am onto something. I just got to keep after it. Well, I sold that car. I got my dream car, which was a Genesis G80 Sport. And it had the full lexicon system in it. And I thought it sounded terrible. But I couldn't figure out a way to put a system in that car without really tearing apart that luxury car, and I didn't want to do that.
Right.
So what I do instead, I put 500 horsepower on it.
Nice.
And then after I ran away from the cops twice, wife told me no more.
No more of that.
So got rid of the car, and I got my Mazda I have now, and it got finished last August, and the rest is history. You know, I placed second in Iasca Amateur, and then second again in Mask Mod X. So in between then, like I said, I've been tuning. I try to tune every day. From then, like literally half a decade ago, to keep on refining, learn new things. I ask people around me, for instance, like a huge shout out to Russ from Octave. He's been a huge help. I like asking questions to people who have been around the block, the OGs, because I know I don't know everything, and I can never know everything. And to this day, I don't know everything, but I want to learn. And also Tony's been a huge help as well. Tony will sit in it and be like, "Nope, not good enough." And then I'll be like, "Okay, cool." And then we'll just keep making it better until finally last time he said, and he was like, "It's good. Like, I like this." And Tony's really hard on me. I've heard other cars that he's judged and he gives them a higher score than me. I'm like, "Tony, what are you doing to me?" He's like, "Nah, dude, just listen. I'm being extremely hard on you. I need to, like, I want you to be good." And I have those kind of people around me to push me to get better each and every day.
Absolutely. So going from kind of dabbling from being a rookie to hobbyist in a fairly short amount of time, and I would, classify even the level you're competing at and everything, still dabbling at that point.
Sure.
But what pushed you to go from that to doing tuning professionally, especially on the road? Like, that's a big jump, right? I mean,
yeah.
Something that I don't know of anybody else who does that or has before offhand. I mean, obviously, you had, especially 5 years ago or so, you had your primary tuners in, as far as like in the competition circuit. You had the Steve Cooks and the Scott Welches,
of course,
and Nick Aposellas and Ben Zimmerman, a couple others, obviously. But I mean, that you had 4, 5, 6 primary tuners that were doing the majority of the hard hitting vehicles out there. Hogan, I mean, there's a list of names, but for the most part, it's all been people who either have a shop or are kind of semi-pro, doing it from their garage somewhere that, is a secret knock to get into.
Yeah.
And now, of course, as we've recently delved into, with the remote tuning that like Jeffrey is doing and
Sure.
Nick has in the past as well, what you're doing is kind of a completely different breed, and also among a peers who are giants compared to where you're coming in at. So what pushed you to do that, think of it, and then execute on it?
Loaded question.
Yep.
So to start off, what pushed me? When I was at Lone Star and I was asking people like, "Hey, how did you get your car like this?" It felt like there was this like black magic voodoo hush hush kind of thing to tuning. And I'm very like analytical and logical. I've always been my entire life. And I'm like, it can't be that hard. There's no way only 1 or 2 or 3 people in the whole world. And I'm severely limiting that number. So don't take that saying there's only 3 people in the world I can tune. But like a small number of people know how to tune. And there's no way that you can be good at it quickly, or there's no way that you can actually learn how to tune like the greats.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I was like, well, that's not fun. I'm like, we're all in this hobby together. Like, why aren't we trying to help each other out?
Mm-hmm.
But once again, it was just very hush hush. So that's why Josh and he's also a very analytical, logical guy. We would just read and do over and over and over again, failing on our face over and over and over again until we started getting to a point where it started to sound correct. And once again, I had my reference at home. So I knew what correct was.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't know at that point in time, year 1, year 2, man, how do I get this thing to sound like that?
Right.
And it was just trial and error, like using my ears, training my ears, going to live events. The same things I preach on my business page for other people to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I don't do anything black magic. If anyone ever asks help, like, hey, how do I tune? I tell them. If anyone wants to sit, like yesterday, Evan was like, hey, I've asked others before, but they always say no. Can I watch you tune? I'm like, dude, I'm going to do one better. Let's up a big monitor and I will walk you through it.
Right.
And I showed him every step that I do. And he was asking me questions and I was just trying to like help him understand what I do. Cause I don't think it's that difficult. He says like, hey, dude, by the way, like maybe you're just too humble. Maybe it is that difficult. But to me, as long as you just keep repeating it over and over and over again, it's kind of like you and I were talking about. Like, it's like riding a bike. In the beginning, it's hard. But then once you learn how to do it, as long as you have repetition, you know how to do it forever.
Yeah, and I think part of that too is, again, like that what we were talking about on the bike side of it is somewhere any fitness sport
For sure.
where you keep working at it, and then it's obviously there's a certain level of fitness there that there's a combination of things that makes that into, but at a local club regional level, which I would say is kind of equal to the best of the best that we have on the circuit. If you're comparing car audio competition to a fitness thing, it's one of those things where again, it's not like there's some, how do I get faster riding a bike? Well, you get your ass on it and you ride.
Yeah.
And yes, there's structured workouts that you can do that might be more efficient at getting you there, or this and that. There are different ways to do that you might think that you need some kind of magic coaching on to get you there. But really, at the end of the day, if you just get out and ride, and when your body says, I've had enough, and you rest, and then you get back on the bike again, like it's kind of like what you're talking about doing. Like you just got out there and you tried and you failed and you tried and you failed and you tried. And I think a lot of people stop at the first fail.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And Josh has pictures of literally like me spending a whole day on the tune,
Mm-hmm.
and then I hop in it and it sounds terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And I just go sit down on the computer and just like put my head in my hands. Like, what am I doing wrong? Like the RTA says it's right. Everything lines up, but it doesn't sound good.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just literally just repetition over and over and over again. I know because I kind of just showed up in the car audio scene like pretty much last August. People think I just learned how to tune out of nowhere and that's it. I'm like, no, like that's not what happened.
Or that you don't know how to tune
Yeah.
and you popped up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just being honest.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Whichever way you want to look at it, but no, like this has been trial and error for years.
I think you discussed too that you're not necessarily. I mean, you've launched the business and the brand out there, and I would say you've done a good job of that because I think everybody's aware of you. But you're also not one of these people that has pushed themselves out there in social media or media in general. Or I mean, I was the one that asked you onto the podcast, and that was. I mean, I think after we even lightly joked about you tuning the van like 2 days ago. So it's not like this was some grand scheme.
Yeah.
I think this all started because you thought I was making fun of you. Had nothing to do with you. But
Let's not get into that one.
Exactly. I don't know. I think everybody's thought I made fun of them at some point, but
yeah,
and I probably have. But I think that there's that level of competency that you've obviously gained, and I can say as somebody who just was on the receiving end of your services. I mean, it sounds great. I mean, I've got. I mean, again, we dialed in the few little things of salt and pepper and taste that anybody needs to do. But I mean, I would probably take it out right now. I mean, again, the limitations of the vehicle are the vehicle itself, and that's only going so far.
And you and I discussed those limitations.
Yes.
And that's also part of the. Sorry to cut you off, but that's also I want people to know, like, because I'm doing this in person, I will let you know what your limitations are, Clifton, because your experience. competitor, you already know your limitations, but some people don't know your limitations. So it's great to be there in person. I'm like, hey, by the way, yes, it sounds great, but it could be better.
Right.
And typically what I would love to have done is, brought my demo car so you can hear it. I'm like, hey, like, this is what I enjoy. This is what I like. And this is what your car could be if you did X, Y, and Z. And by no means is my car or myself. Let me take one step back. My car is not the end all be all because everyone has a different taste. And also, I will never claim myself to be the best tuner in the world or the best at anything. Every single day I'm learning something new. So if anyone ever at some point wants to be like, hey, Miguel, I think you did something wrong, tell me. I have no problem learning something new. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I will apologize and we'll move forward from it. So yeah, I just want to learn from everyone and teach other people along the way so others can enjoy their system.
Speaking of the education side of things, I mean, did you, and I also don't know the answer to this, so I'm just asking, but have you like attended like Mark Eldridge's class or anything like that? Or have you?
No, I was going to actually this month, but unfortunately funds just weren't there. So it just didn't happen this time. Hopefully in the summer, I'll be able to go. Yeah. But no, like I said, it's just been a whole bunch of reading. Reading and asking other people and the people who are willing to give me answers. Great person I know I bugged a lot. Like I said, Russ, of course, I bugged him so much. But Adam Daniels from the UK, I've asked him a million questions. I've asked Nick some questions. I've asked Jeffrey before some questions. I've asked Brian Mitchell some questions. Steve Head questions. I asked people who, in my opinion, should know the answer. Right. Or at least a particular, like, hey, I heard your car. It did this part well, and I like that. How did you do it? A lot of times I'll get that kind of like grim and it's like, yeah, I know it did good, but they don't ever give me the answer. So I just go like figure it out myself.
Right.
But sometimes, they are willing to help me out and I learn and I experiment. And sometimes they tell me, hey, I did this and this and I try my own car. I'm like, nope, don't like it. So then I'll do whatever I want to do to make it sound right to me.
Mm-hmm.
So
what do you get out of the process of the whole thing? Like, what's your incentive there? And the only reason I ask is because, again, you're doing something that nobody has, I don't think, the same way you are, traveling and doing everything. And obviously you're never really going to be, I mean, you might break even, right?
Yeah. I try to break even.
I mean, it is, I don't know if I'm making myself clear on the question, but why?
Why? Got you. So let me take one step back and answer questions on why I did mobile tuning, if you want to call it that. Some people call it that. I don't really call it mobile tuning because it's not like I'm just driving around like the US randomly, like tuning cars. I stay at home until someone says, hey, I want you to tune my car. I'm like, cool. And then I come to you. So one, I'm blessed enough that I don't need this income. Two, I'm a business major. So I did market analysis. I wrote a whole business overview on WaveForm. And I've thought about this business because there's always something I've loved doing. I've loved audio and I've always would love to have made money off of it. But, it almost seems like as an adult, society kind of like makes you kind of grow up and like, no, you can't do audio for a living. Like, no, like go do something, productive to the world. So I became an Intel analyst. But then, I got out and then I became a senior Intel analyst for General Dynamics. And then I quit that. And I was like, man, you know what? I really want to do this audio thing. Like, I'm good at it. People have heard my cars. The other cars I've tuned, everyone's really enjoyed them. Like, why don't I do this for other people, given that I can be there in person and not have to do it remotely? Mm-hmm. So that's how kind of that started. And with the market analysis, I realized there are plenty of remote tuners out there. Shannon's another one that I know. I think he's based off of Illinois.
Yep. That,
he's definitely prevalent in the game for remote tuning. And I was like, it's already oversaturated. And I dabbled in a little bit, but I got out of it. I feel like as quick as I entered it. Cause I'm like, every single time they'll be like, it's not right. And I'm like, what's not right? And then they couldn't articulate what wasn't right. It was just frustrating for me and them. And I was like, I don't want to do that. Like if I'm going to tune someone's car, I want it to be great for them at that moment. They don't need to get a retune over and over and over again. So that's when the mobile kind of in-person thing started. But with that comes finances. Like you don't want to be read every single time you go for a trip.
Right.
So given that, I feel like most of the remote tuners, at least, let me not say that. Most of the remote tuners stick around between $500 and $600. So I'm like, okay, well, how much will it cost for me to go to, let's say, New Jersey? And I actually picked New Jersey because I'm like, that's kind of the furthest I would really drive up and like not hurt myself in my back and my hips and all of that from driving so far. And I did the math. You know, it was going to be like after hotel costs and everything, it was going to be about like $800 to $900 after food and just after everything. I was like, okay, well, if I charge $1,250, I price myself out of the remote tuners so they can still have a slice of the pie. Not saying that I'm having a slice of the pie, if that makes any sense, but like they have their customer base, and then people who have typically premium systems that have, you know, Moscone Pros or Focal Utopia, where the tweeters alone cost more than $1,250, they wouldn't mind spending that money to get someone to do it in person. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where my price for $1,250 after 500 miles, and if you're in 500 miles, it's $1,000. Also, in the beginning, it was very hard for me to figure out that pricing list, because originally it was going to be, okay, if you're 200 miles, it'll be this. If you're in California, it'll be this. But if you're in Texas, it'll be this. I'm like, you know what? Yes, I could probably make more money that way. But if I was on the receiving end as a customer, that would just be confusing. And I don't want that. I want it to be very black and white and simple.
Or just penalizing someone based on where they live.
Correct. And I didn't want to do that because I know, like, let's say like the California guys, like that's not fair to them. You know, like, yeah, they live on the West Coast. But if I lived on the West Coast, then they wouldn't have been penalized and the Floridians would have been penalized. So it's like, let's just make it simple. Everyone kind of just pays roughly the same. And I take the hit of how much money am I making or not making.
Right.
Because once again, I'm blessed enough where I don't do this for the money. I don't do this to make ends meet. So if I make $50, which it has happened before. After expenses, sure. I had made $50. Yeah. I'm like, cool. Hey, babe, let's go out to eat. and that's it.
All today.
And my brand new car, you know, I already have over 20,000 miles on it. And literally, I bought it not even a year ago because I'm going to people's houses. But I don't care. I want to enjoy the company of other sound quality people.
Sure.
And what they enjoy. And I want to have the experience. I don't want people to be my customers. I want at the end of the day for us to exchange numbers and be friends, because there's not many of us out here.
Right.
So,
well, yeah, and in a lot of ways, I mean, I think there at the end, especially what you were saying makes a lot of sense there, because it's a unique way that you're able to be in total control of contributing to the community.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and I understand that completely. I mean, I guess it's in a lot of ways, it's very similar to eschatology in general as well, because like eschatology doesn't make any money. It usually loses money.
Yeah.
But with what I'm able to do, what I'm good at, and my own limitations, that's where I feel between this, what we're doing now, and a couple particular events, like I feel like that's what I can contribute to something that my entire life has revolved around, you know? And, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And going back a little bit too on I think your education ramp, something I thought of in the process there is so many of the people, even some of the younger ones who have, you know, maybe, how old are you?
Bobby, 29 here. Short.
29. Okay. So you're in there with the younger ones, I would say.
For sure.
But some of them have started earlier.
Yeah.
And so I think the level of available information out there, especially with technology advances such as, you know, array tuning with smart, and, you know, now, you know, like the JL Max is based on that, and, you know, stuff that's been around in like the pro audio world for, you know, none of this is new.
No. This has been out for a while.
Yeah.
You know, it's just new for us now in the car audio. It's like, hey, let's put this in a car and measure phase with a whole bunch of reflections and see what happens.
Right. And none of it is a magic button, but I think there's a plethora of information out there now that's more mainstream because of all that. And I think also the current new crop of people who are hot into car audio now have, and I don't mean this in a bad way at all, but have less respect for tradition.
Yeah.
And in that, just you explained it in your story. It's like, I don't accept the fact that this is a black magic box. I'm going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry that annoys you, but I'm going to. I liken this a little bit to the way technology has flattened worldwide, in that a decade ago, our guys, we made our first trip over to China to do training, and it was just like, oh, brand new concepts, all this, amazing stuff, everything else. And then like 2 years later, Scott and I went together over to China, and at that point they were completely bored of all of it. It was like they'd figured that part out, and they'd gone ahead of where we were at the time, and then asking us. It's like they were the ones pushing the envelope from not knowing what any of it was. Within a couple of years, just
exceeding,
where we at next. And I think that's where, when a lot of us started back when, it was like, well, this year we might learn this, and then next year we might learn that.
Of course,
it took years to make that progress. I mean, and so I think I want to call it gatekeeping, but I think there's some frustration with some people when it's like, well, I put in all this effort. Everybody should have to put in the exact same amount of effort and have this put in the same amount of time and everything else. And somebody, I think it's hard for people to admit that somebody might be as good or better than them without putting the quote unquote time in or whatever. And I think that's where I'm just reflecting back, where I think your rise has literally created waves. No pun intended. But I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think pushing that norm, and I think that it's like anything, you could be out there keyboard warrioring, telling everybody how good you are, and how you've corrected this and done that and throw out whatever you want. Yeah. But I feel you've done the right thing there in letting your customers and the tunes talk for themselves over time.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I'm not that kind of person that likes boasting myself. I let my customers do the talking for me. If they're happy, I'm happy. If some other person's upset that now their customer's happy or whatever, I can't control other people's feelings.
Sure.
I can only control what I can control, which is, what do I do for my customers? And then my friends, because they become friends. At least to me, they're my friends. Hopefully they think we're friends. But I do agree with you at some parts of that a lot of the newer generation kind of doesn't have, maybe respect isn't the correct word to use, but maybe it's just like lack of sympathy or empathy for the trial and tribulation that you got to go through decades at a time to try to get the stuff that we can see on a computer screen instantly. And technology has advanced. Kind of back in the 1800s, you have to ride on horse to get a mail, and now we can just send you a text.
Right.
Technology advances, and because of that, people can do more and more cool things. But to me and who I am, I would never want to hinder someone else from learning and experience something cool that I love every day just because they didn't put in the effort. If I can make them happy, that makes me happy.
Oh, agreed.
So me personally, I do understand that. And I just like calling them OGs. Like, that's just why I kind of just blanket everyone who's been doing this for years. And I'm talking about not like 1 decade, but decades.
Right.
And I have the utmost respect because every single one of their cars sound phenomenal. And they have done it with the lack of the tools that we have now. And a lot of them is just, it's been training their ears to get their cars to where it's at. And that's why I preach all the time on my business page. I'm like, yes, the RTA is a great tool. The JL Max is a great tool. But at the end of the day, and then I've been taught this by my OGs, that's just what it is. It's a tool. And if you train your ears, you can get your car from being good to great. And you can do the same thing for other people. Am I saying that my ears are the golden ears on the most amazing person? No, absolutely not. I don't think any of us are. I think each one of us has a different strength and weakness that if we all come together, 100%. We can make, like, if we all come together to one car and, like my focus is, let's say, attack and yours is imaging and, Steve Heads is, transparency and, all these, I think we could probably make a car that will rival the best of the best ever created. But I feel like in our community,
there's too much ego.
Yeah, there's way too much ego. None of us want to help each other out. We kind of just be like, well, my car is the best. And the other person said, my car is the best. And like, there's a lot of just that where I'm like, can we just all be friends? There's not many of us here. Like, let's just help each other out. So
I think the quote unquote money rounds with having multiple judges does lend itself as a tool in that direction.
Yeah, for sure.
The downside is I think a lot of people want to share a limited amount of information to support their own ego.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to, I feel there's 100% the people out there who will spend their life giving all their knowledge in an attempt to do that. But it's still one person's perspective. Like the
100%.
the more you can pull that together in the right way and make that blend, that's when I think the magic happens. And when you have enough, not only knowledge, but respect for yourself to make cohesive decisions on your build and tuning and knowing where your limitations are.
For sure.
And being willing to ask the questions. And I think that in itself is difficult because, again, ego. So, it shows that you don't know something if you're out there asking questions.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, there has to be a level of humility that we all have to have. A great example of a person that I feel like, I'm not sure how long he's been doing this, but does want to help others is Mark Eldridge. I mean, he teaches people classes on how to tune. He's teaching people what he has learned for decades and giving it to people like myself when I go and others that might be brand new. Like, hey, this is how you do it. And if you learn and you really study what he's saying and you put it to practice, kind of like we talked about earlier, you can also be a good tuner. I think the problem and the limitation is that people nowadays, and I know this might be going on a rant, but I feel like nowadays people want everything today and right now in that instant gratification. And they don't understand, like, even me that I put in, it could be condensed into like half a decade, but that's still half a decade that it took me to learn this. And I mean, Clifton, I can show you my computer. From September, when I got my JL Max to today, I had probably tuned my car and mainly my car, just to try to learn it in the hundreds. Mm-hmm. And that's just with one system, let alone all the hundreds of tunes I've done before that were failures. And I have a folder, and you know what that folder says? Failed tunes.
Nice.
Because like it was what it is. Like it wasn't up to snuff.
Right.
And it wasn't until I got answers from other OGs that they've heard my car and like, okay, you're doing something. This is good. Once I started getting that answer from multiple of them, it's like, okay, this is good without much feedback except for their own personal salt and pepper. Then that's when I launched my business.
Yeah. And getting that tuning fitness level up again, like I keep repeating myself, but I think that's a really key thing here that you did, because I think that's where a lot of retailers, people who do this for a living, but they regularly fail at it because they don't really touch the tool until it's game day when they have a car that needs a tune, and then they do it, and then they go, how do I do that? What is that? Yeah. And it's, there's nothing, obviously there's more complexities to DSPs today than there was even 5 years ago.
Of course.
But, I've been doing my part attempting to teach this for over a decade now. And back then it was kind of, there's crossovers, time delay, EQ, levels. It's like all this stuff we've had for a very long time.
Yep. Nothing new.
Right. But I think part of the issue is in the teachers, because the teachers want to have something they can package and sell as a concept. So it turns into, this is the way, and then they start arguing about which way is which, and then it's like, well, instead of arguing about which way is the right, there isn't one way to do this. I know that for a fact.
Yeah,
because
definitely not. Everyone has a different way to achieve it.
Right.
There's probably a million ways to skin this cat.
Right. So I think the key there is play with it, do what you did, it's running, ride your bike, whatever. Like, you'll find your way that works for your body. And it's the same way I think with this, like you'll find, when I do this, this is what happens. And it does better when I do it this way. Find it for yourself, and you can definitely learn from others to do that. But at the end of the day, you got to be confident in the tools for you.
For sure.
To get there in that way. So, I mean, obviously there's no overnight success, but I think that's what is here. Like, and I think the concept, and I'm not just applying this to you, I'm applying this to a lot of people out there recently. I think there's this idea, and I think that the concept is true with some, that, oh, I went out and bought a JL Max.
Yep.
And now I'm a professional tuner.
Now that's it.
You know?
That's it. I think we should end the podcast right there. The JL Max is what does it. No, of course not. You know, because just like, what did we just say not even like 10 minutes ago? These tools have been around on the pro level for years now. Like this isn't something new. You think the OEM guys, they never heard of a JL Max before? No. I mean, they have their own crazy version of it.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, like Anton or Bose or, you know,
Carmen.
Yeah. They all have these tools for a long time. What's your favorite part of the entire part of the process? What's your favorite part?
Definitely interacting with the customer.
And I would 100% agree with that. You're really good at it.
Thank you.
You really are.
It means a lot that, one, they paid money to bring me out there. And every single time I message them once everything's done and they're happy, I'm like, thank you for giving me the opportunity to let me tune your car. Because there are a lot of others that they could have called, but they chose me. So like, I feel really honored to tune anyone's car. And
I think that's, I mean, not to interrupt you there, but I think this is something that you do bring to the industry, and that's just your personality. And I think whether it's it, and I'm not going to sit here and judge, it doesn't matter, but whether it's a learned behavior or it's you or whatever, it doesn't matter. You're really good at it. And I'm pretty good at picking through authenticity. So I'd say it's you and who you are. But within this industry, obviously it's not necessarily an industry of charismatic, outgoing people.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're overly that way at all, but I think your personality is really, really good for this. And I think that's something that you bring to the table that is perfect for what you're doing the in-person tuning the way you are. And I think here's the thing.
Yep.
Let's say I'd called you up and said, hey, come out here, cutting you a check now to come tune my car specifically, come out and do this. And I went through the experience just like we did. And then we got done and I deleted the tune after you left.
Yep.
I would feel I got full value just by having the experience of doing the process.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, hey, and guess what? The people who, you know, and I'm saying that because for me in particular, like, hey, I can tune my own car, you know, it's like, but for somebody who can't or doesn't want to or whatever, or they just want to see what somebody else can do, which is people too.
Yep.
Like, you can obviously tune. I'm not deleting your tune. I'll probably keep it on there. I mean, and I'll probably not touch it. Like, we're there. I'm good.
I'm
no
glad
problem.
you like it.
So, I mean, if somebody wants to hear what you do and understand the limitations of the vehicle, I'll be more than happy to explain that.
Make sure you put the sub at volume 10 like we did.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much where it sits most of the time. So, but I mean, seriously, it's nothing wrong with the tune. I don't want to give that impression, but I'm saying the experience itself was worth it. I mean, you did an amazing job there, and I'm not trying to blow smoke here. It's just that you're above and beyond that, and that's something that probably doesn't get communicated on a regular basis from anybody because they go, "Oh, my car sounds great, and I won a trophy. Great, cool." But I mean, did you learn something? Did you have fun doing it? And
yeah,
I did. You know, and I think that's a critical part.
I think it might have been the burger that you ate through that you're so happy.
What has been your biggest aha moment in all this?
See, that's hard.
It seems like one big explosion of everything, but you know, but what within that, what do you think has been your biggest, like, you know, you got the feedback right. And that gave you confidence.
Yes.
But I feel like maybe there is something along there where you were like, oh yeah, this is my jam.
I think maybe it was just how during finals at some point, there were like 5 people waiting to hear my car.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know where that came from because I was just chilling. Like I was just going around saying hi to people. I'm like, hey, can I listen to your car? They're like, after I get judged. I'm like, okay. Like, I'll come back later. Like, And then I don't know where wife texted me and she's like, hey, there's someone wants to listen to your car. I'm like, oh, sweet. And then like another dude popped up and another dude popped up. And every single one was just like, man, this car sounds really good. And like, I knew my car sounded good, but I wasn't like, with so many other cars out there, it's like, why are people lining up to hear my car? And then it was Mike Myers, he hopped in my car and he was like, man, this car sounds very similar to mine. And I hopped in it and it was very similar. The imaging was the same. The impact, the tonality. I was like, well, clearly I'm doing something right. Do I still have a lot to learn? 100%. I will say that to the day I die. I will forever say I have a lot to learn. But I think my biggest aha moment was that people enjoyed my style of tuning. Because everyone has a different signature and a different taste. This way, I also do it in person because I know people, we all want the same thing, and that is to enjoy the system. But we all have slightly different ways that we want to eat the steak.
Right.
Make sense?
Oh, yeah.
So given that people enjoyed it without much salt and pepper really needing to be added, I'm like, okay, like, because the curve that I built, and of course I adjusted depending on what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, the limitations of the car and whatnot. But I built that completely by ear. So 3 days after I got the car, now I have to backtrack. August 19th, if I'm mistaken, is when I picked my car up from Russ. And 3 days later was Battle of the Bays in Florida and the money round, right? And at this point in time, I didn't even have my JL Max. So I was using the U-Mic X, threw the mics in there, and I listened to it. I'm like, okay, this is about a 70% solution, and I'm not too happy with it. So I went up to a couple people's house. I went up to Steve Head's house. He put his flavor on it. I'm like, okay, that's his flavor. That's not what I'm looking for. That's not it. That's what Steve can do. Let's see what else we can do. So I went to DeAndre Skaggs' house, and he put his flavor on it. I'm okay. Those Steve's and DeAndre's flavors similar. Still not what it's not what I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. And then I went to Jeff Kidwell. Thank you, Jeff Kidwell. I almost said Kibble. I'm like, no, that's wrong. Sorry,
Jeff Kibble's a bit.
Sorry, Jeff. Yeah, Jeff. Yeah, and he put his flavor on it, and still, I'm like, this isn't this isn't Miguel. This isn't what my tune is, and I want this car, especially with a big event like that, and that the install was so great. I'm like, I want this to be good. So I said I would go to work. Actually, let me backtrack 1 second. I would wake up in the morning. I woke up in the morning at 2 a.m. I would tune the car by ear, referencing my reference at home, just back and forth. I fortunately had to wake my wife up. I just didn't care. I was like, I need to do good. And then I would just literally back and forth, refining it by ear. And then I would go to work, come back, do that again, and just kept doing that for 3 days. Mm-hmm. And then finally, my wife did the exact same thing. Like I started having her bounce back and forth. I'm like, what do you think? Kind of also trying to teach her how to listen. I mean, I think it's pretty known that women have better hearing than men do. Mm-hmm. So using her ears to like fact check me, because you can definitely get lost in the weeds sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Be like, man, this car sounds great. And then,
no,
honestly, dude, like she hopped in it with one song and she just opened the window. She's like, this is trash. I was like, damn it.
Not it, bro.
I was like, okay. And she was spot on. It wasn't right.
Dang it, Michael.
And then, I was happy because at the end of the day, 3 days later, I placed 9th in the money round. And people were like, I think people just looked at me like, who's this kid?
Right.
That goes to, I think it was one of the biggest or the first money round show in Florida in a long time. I think there were like over 20 cars there, maybe 30 cars there. And then I placed in the, in the top 10, that I'm like, okay, I still got it. Now let's keep working. Let's keep getting better. And then my JL Max finally got in, and that was a whole learning curve, dude. Sure. From going from roots and something that I was proficient in and got good at, and then knowing that, hey, by ear, I could just make it do what I want, to using this tool that has, now I can see phase, not just hear it. Mm-hmm. And now I can see time alignment. I unfortunately kind of, for the first month, I want to say I drank the Kool-Aid, the JL Max Kool-Aid, and the RTA Kool-Aid, which I was like, man, it doesn't sound right, but the measurements say it's good.
So good. Yeah.
Right? So it's good.
I must be off.
Yeah, right. And that's literally, like I said, unfortunately for about a month, I felt like now hindsight, I backtracked. But I think it was a good, maybe that's my aha moment, where once again, I kind of like retaught myself. Right. Like, hey, even with the best tools out there, the best tools are still my ears. Yeah. And that's still just a tool.
Right.
And then what happened during finals, I tuned it with a JL Max literally in the parking lot for an hour, and then hopped in it, did some changes, and then I got second. Like that's what happened. It wasn't magic. I didn't sit in there for the past, month retuning that one tune. No, that was an hour tune.
Well, and you probably have over time, now that you're doing other people's cars and seeing / hearing the differences between configuration, setup,
100%,
speaker aiming, vehicle itself, all those kinds of things. Like you're probably getting, even if it's not completely conscious or documented, like you're getting more reference points on seeing how the data align in a way that what you're seeing doesn't align with what you're hearing, but maybe this is why.
100%. That happens so often. Yes, the RTA can look beautiful and the phase trays can all line up. But sometimes, and this actually happens maybe more often than not, actually, it just happened in your truck. I had an all-pass filter on one of the mid-ranges, second order, Q of 4 at 233 hertz. Man, that thing on the graph, that thing did it. Like everything lined up. I was like, cool, I'm good to go. I hopped in it. That one all-pass filter was throwing everything off. So what I do, turn it off, it came alive. I'm like, oh, okay. Like sometimes microphones are just that. Like they don't understand kind of like the way the human ears and the brain kind of interpret sound. So sometimes just getting in and turning stuff on and off, you might notice a huge change in a positive way or maybe in a negative way. Not saying that it's not a great tool. It is a great tool, but I just want, and I know I keep on repeating this and I do this even on my business page. It's like, guys, use your ears. Go out and listen to non-amplified events. I'm going to harp on that, non-amplified.
Yep.
My wife and I, we go to jazz bars and speakeasies. Like we kind of like search for those.
Yeah.
That's kind of like our vibe. Even though we get mocktails, we don't drink anymore.
Right.
But I just like experiencing it. That's why my car sounds very different than the OGs. And let me expand that a little more. I actually wrote a reference post on this. One thing I noticed with most of the OGs, actually, your car, the way you want to tune, is kind of similar to the way a lot of the OGs are, where the impact, the mid bass, is a lot less than what the newer school wants. And it's more of like they like their stage very deep. It's a very deep stage. That's what the OGs like. At least that's what I've noticed.
Yeah.
But a lot of times that tends to lend to mid bass attack that's more representative of you sitting back in like an orchestra, if that makes sense. And you're like back row and they're kind of like playing in front of you in that kind of depth. Where me, I'm looking for a speakeasy type event where I'm sitting 3 feet away from that drummer. And like every single time he hits that snare, I'm in pain. That's what I want in my car. Like I want that mid bass attack and that mid range. I just want it all like, I want it there. I want it alive. And the only other, like, you know what? Let me backtrack. Natan, even though he is an OG, his car is a more of a speakeasy type event where like, let's say Steve Heads, his is more of like that big
Orchestra,
open, big open orchestra type event. And they're both amazing just in their own
just different balance
way.
Yeah.
So there's just another more of that salt and pepper thing where each one of us has a different flavor. And I actually asked you, I'm like, hey, what are you looking for?
Right.
Because it all makes a difference. And actually, when you said something about you want a lot of detail, because I personally like a little bit more of a laid back mid range than most do as well. But I ramp up to still have the detail. I don't want to lose the detail. I just don't want that mid range to be fatiguing.
Right.
But, and I made this kind of like logical inference. Did I say that word right? Inference?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so. Where I was like, okay, Clifton's not young like I am. Maybe his hearing at around like 10, 12, 14, 15K isn't the way mine is. Let me give that a little bit more boost. Even though to me in my ears, I'm like, man, that's a little bright. That has a little sibilance on it. But maybe to him, because this is his car, it won't be. So I was like, I'm just going to leave it. And plus you said you want to attack. I'm like, okay, how much attack does he want? I don't know. So I'm going to give him a lot.
Right.
And then it's very easy for me to take that
pull
away,
back. Right.
versus me trying to boost to try to get you what you wanted. So when you hopped in it, what you say, hey, I feel like there's a little something. Like, cool. I actually already had that highlighted. So when you said it, I'm like, and off. And that was it. I'm like, done.
Yeah.
You know,
fix that.
Yeah. Because like we all have a different way of hearing. And sometimes maybe to my own fault, I'm like, well, maybe the old guys just can't hear as well as I can. But maybe that's not right. Maybe I should stop saying that. I just know, logical, the way humans develop.
Right.
Hearing does tend to drop off in the higher frequencies.
I would, yes. But I think that depends on how much people stick up on training their ears and referencing.
Of course.
Because the hearing loss means that you need to work harder or, the hearing changes, whatever. But I've had hearing issues since I was 6. So I've been in audios, or at least heavily around audio my entire life.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty accustomed to constantly having to put in the work to keep my reference up.
Yeah.
I think the problem comes is when people think they have their reference and they're done, and then they stop doing that fitness level in the same way.
Yeah,
like if you don't, and so and that's something I would really encourage people, whether they're doing a remote tune or they're having you come tune it or they're learning themselves. I think that's something that is always important for people to understand, because if you don't have that learned reference in your head, and it doesn't mean a reference system, it means a learned reference in terms of as many different ideals as you can to cognitively listen to music, not just hear it, but listen to it. That is all going to add up to knowing what you want with confidence. So even if you like, I don't have the tools you have, I don't have even the recent experience you have. Like, I've never charged for a tune in my entire life. Like, can I get there myself? Can I fumble through? Absolutely.
100%,
but you're going to be more efficient at getting there. But I know what I want.
Exactly.
And I can tell you how I want to get, it's like we can get there together.
Yep.
So I think anybody who is wanting, who is not necessarily wanting to learn how to tune and all that part of it, but wants the maximum from their vehicle, regardless of how they get there, learning to be able to confidently give that feedback is absolutely key.
100%.
And
I couldn't agree more with you, Clifton. Yeah.
And it's funny because we were talking about this at lunch too, but it's like I used to, and I think I said this in the last podcast with Jeffrey and Nick as well, but it's like I used to, before I went through this whole process of doing the remote tunes with Jeffrey and now this process with you in person, like before all this, my biggest thing was like, hey, with these other people who know who can do this tuning level, maybe, because I can't teach people to have golden ears.
Yeah.
And it's hard to teach tuning to somebody who just needs a tune.
For sure.
So it's a lot of work to go through. It's kind of like, oh, let me learn how to rebuild my transmission because I need to do that once.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
It's going to be a whole lot easier just to have somebody do it.
Just do it, yeah.
But in this case, like, regardless, I mean, I think it's almost like I've almost reversed to maybe you don't need to know the technicals so much, but maybe training your ears for that reference is still the key point.
It is.
Because that's going to get you knowing what you want to hear and knowing how to convey that in words is going to get you the closest to the end result, whether it's in person with you like this, or it's a remote tune or anywhere in between. And I think that was further reinforced with me today that, hey, even if you're hearing this vehicle in person, doing it and everything else, it's still not a green easy button to the end result of what you're after.
100%.
It's still going to take that feedback back and forth, and you being here in person helps that process. And I think, it's in a way, it's easier to have that communication non-verbally, if that makes sense.
100%,
like,
yeah.
because I can, if you're sitting in the back seat while I'm playing the song, I go, see right there, to hear that, right? Yep. That part right there, that's the part that's too much.
Yeah.
Okay, I can fit.
Easy. Yeah, exactly.
It's harder for me to do that in a remote. Yeah. I think you can get to the same place, but I think that's where, in either case, that becomes the responsibility of the tuner to have their process to get through that. Whether that's, the specific tracks they use and saying, okay, what does that sound like? What does that sound like? What, and I think there needs to be a system in place there for people to get there. That's going to take a little more time to get to that next level, but it's possible. But yeah, people need to learn.
So can I stop you right there, Clifton? Because I just want to, because I have ADHD, so my brain will forget in like half a second.
Go.
There's something that I just want to like make sure people understand what you just said, because words mean things. You said you need to learn your reference for you, not for me,
right?
For you, because every single one of us kind of have like a different goal in our head. So the more you understand what you want, the easier it is for someone a remote tuner, me, whomever, to get you what you want in your system. Because this isn't, and I try to tell people, I'm like, listen, make your car fun for you and don't focus too much on the competition, the judging. That's going to happen regardless if you want to compete. But just make it fun for you in the beginning, because you spent all that money for you, not for someone else.
Well, to me, it's like going to get a $50,000 paint job on your custom car and saying, I want a red car.
Yeah.
And the other guy going, okay, here's the best red I have. And you not being part of the back and forth in that process.
Exactly.
And you end up with
a car
Ferrari orange red and you wanted candy apple red.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. Precisely. And, and then you have someone else to tell you what color that is when you can clearly see what color that is. Like sometimes it's just better for you to enjoy your system. Not at all saying, hey, don't compete. I mean, I compete. Like it's fun. It's a fun sport, if you will. But don't let that be the dictating factor on how good your car can or cannot be, depending on, well, if I cut a hole here, I'll go up a class. Well, will it make your car better? Yes. Right. Then just do it. Like, who cares what happens? Just enjoy your car.
Oh, I agree with that 1,000%. And there's not that much. I mean, it's not like there's an easier class.
Yeah.
There's not lower or higher classes. It's based on complexity. So, I mean, it's one of those things where never hold yourself back based on that. I agree 100%.
Yeah. And then you said, I created, and I'm not sure if you have them, I created 3 big playlists. And I noticed that like a lot of people like Resonix playlists. Everything was in one huge playlist, right? And I've had playlists for years. I mean, I have over 5,000 songs on my phone. I was like, man, you know what? I'm going to make a playlist for other people to use, but to make it kind of easy to find what they're looking for. So I created a mid-bass playlist, a male vocals playlist, and a female vocals playlist. Mm-hmm. So that way, like if you want, like, hey, I want female vocals, you're not searching for hours on this playlist that has 1,000 songs. You can just go there and quickly find it. So if anyone is getting their car remotely tuned, ask them to send you what songs they know well and you know well, so you both can at least correlate on the same song.
Agreed.
Not like, hey, I really like jazz, and then my customer is like, oh, I only listen to rap. Well, if I tell them, hey, what does this jazz song sound like? They don't know. Like, that's not what they listen to. So I created that playlist, and unfortunately, I got a little bit of pushback. Like, well, like, why do you have so many songs? I'm like, well, the playlist wasn't created for me. It was created for everyone else to use.
You'll pick something.
Yeah, like I have my own playlist that I call it car dial-in, that I personally use for me. But I mean, if you listen to rap, I have some rap songs on there. And if you tell me, yeah, I like Put On by G-Eazy, I have that on my mid-bass playlist. So you and I can correlate. Like, okay, I know that song well. You know that song well. Let's roll with it.
Right. Absolutely.
So yeah.
What advice would you give to yourself 5 years ago when you started doing this?
Don't let other people tell you that you can't do something. Mm-hmm. Because for a little bit when I first started, especially when I went to Lone Star, and it almost felt like everyone just like looked down on me. They're like, man, your car sounds so bad. I mean, and it did. I mean, that car, I tuned it flat. That car sounded.
And that's where you kind of have to separate yourself from the results, right? Like,
yeah. I was like, man, I'm like, this sucks. I mean, like, and it just was what it was. But I think it fueled me because I'm like, well, if people really want to quote unquote gatekeep or make us doing black magic or like talk bad to people just because they are at a more advanced level, well, I'm going to show people that I can get there without anyone's quote unquote help, if that makes sense. I'm not saying I didn't have help, but I didn't have someone holding my hand along the way. I've made all the trials and tribulations myself, and with Josh as well. And then I had people along the way saying, hey, here's some water so you can continue down your journey when I asked them for help, if you will. Just don't listen to the internet, y'all.
Learn from it.
Yeah, learn from it.
Listen to the naysayers.
And just understand that whatever's on the internet, 90% of it's wrong. So just apply it and listen to it. And if it doesn't sound right, then it doesn't sound right.
Move on.
And just keep pushing. And that goes with any advice. If Clifton would tell me, yeah, my sub needs plus 10 dB, I'm going to give it to him. But I'm not going to apply that to my own car. So yeah.
What's wrong with plus 10 on the sub, man?
Hey, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not my cup of tea.
I told you I like car audio bass. Come on now. I'm just kidding. Well, man, I really appreciate you popping up here and hanging out for the day. And I mean, like I said, everything beyond expectations. So well done. I appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you, Clifton. Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, now that we're live, thank you for letting me tune your car. It was an honor. It was really fun. Dude, your van is sick. Like, if anyone hasn't seen this thing, it has curtains in the back that are electronic. I just need you to know how cool this thing is.
Well, man, I appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
For sure, brother. Be safe.
How about the ones we especially like? Which ones? You know, the ones with the cars that go, I hear you. Hit it.